Hi, welcome to the SAP Business One Academy Helpful How-Tos. This is going to be one of our longer sessions because I have quite a complex topic to cover. Well, not so much complex, but a process that requires a number of different steps. So hopefully you'll work through this process with me. What I'm going to do in today's Helpful How-To is I'm going to show you how to integrate SAP Business One and Microsoft Office 365. As you know, Office 365 is Microsoft's new subscription-based offering for Microsoft Office. It gives you Microsoft Exchange, it gives you Microsoft SharePoint, Microsoft Link, all in a hosted environment. And it also gives you access to the Office 2010 professional licenses, which you can either deploy on-premise or in the cloud. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do an integration between SAP Business One and Office 365. I'm going to use SAP Business One version 9, and this is running off the SAP Business One demo server, the demo farm that I run on behalf of the SAP Business One community. The process that I'm going to take you through is exactly the same whether you're running Business One on-premise or you're running it in the cloud. So let's get started. The first thing you're going to need to do, and I'm assuming that you already have your Office 365 licenses, the first thing you're going to need to do is make sure that all the right components are installed on your machine. So how do you do that? Well, first thing you need to do is you need to go and you need to log on to the Microsoft Office 365 portal. So I'm going to do that right now. And once you've chosen that URL, it will bring you to this page where you can sign in with your Office account. So I'm going to do that with your Office 365 account. So I'm going to log in with mine. And don't forget, if you're not currently running Office 365, it is possible to get a trial version so you can play around with Office 365 and see whether or not it's going to fit your requirements. Interesting point, one of the things that we've seen lately is that Microsoft are encouraging people to move to the Office 365 licensing model. In fact, with the new version of Office, it's actually cheaper to do it that way than it is to buy perpetual licenses. But anyway, so I'm going to sign in. And you'll see that this is the administration console. For those of you who are familiar with Office 365, this is where you create users, you do all of your administration of your company and your company's accounts. But what I want to do is, because I've already gone through and done all of my setup here, and that's not the purpose of this session, I'm not going to show you how to do all that setup. I'm just going to show you how to get SAP Business One up and running with Office 365. So I already have my Microsoft Office loaded up here, and you can see there's all my Microsoft Office applications. But what I want to do is I want to go here into Downloads. And then I want to scroll down to the bottom, and I want to choose option number 3, which is Set up and configure your Office desktop apps. So I'll click on Setup, because the key component that we're going to use here in this first part of my demonstration is we're going to set up a link between SAP Business One and Microsoft SharePoint. So I'm going to configure SAP Business One so it stores all of your attachments on Microsoft Office 365 using SharePoint Online. Alright, so it's going to ask me, do I want to run this application? And I do, so I'll choose Run, and we'll let that download, and then once that's finished downloading, we'll go ahead and run the software. So our download's now finished, and in a second you're going to see the startup, and it's signing in. Once again, it's going to ask you, if you haven't already signed in, it's going to ask you to sign in with your account. And here it is. Yes, that's the one that I want to use. So I'll choose Sign In. It's going to ask me again to put in my password. And I'll say Keep Me Signed In. And of course, don't forget that this is stored together with your Windows profile. So each person in your organization can have their own separate profile. But in this case, I'm just going to choose Sign In. As you can see, it's now checking my system configuration. It's going to double check to see what updates I need to install. And this may take a little bit of time, so we'll just let it run. Then I'll come back once it's finished. Alright, so you can see that it's going to configure Microsoft Outlook. It's going to configure Microsoft SharePoint. And it's also reminding me that there's a couple of updates that I need to load. So that's great. I'm going to let it go ahead and do that. So I'll say continue. And what you'll see happen next is that download will start. And I accept the service agreement, so that's fine. And away it goes. It's now downloading the extra components that are required on my machine to enable me to work with Office 365. So once again, I'm going to let those download, and then I'll come back when they're finished and we'll keep going with our session. Alright, so you can see that those updates have all been installed and all of the necessary components have been configured. And of course you can see here that there are some manual steps required to configure Microsoft Outlook, and we'll run through those in a second. So what do I need to do? I need to click on Finish, and that's now done. So if I close that down, what you'll now see is I have this shortcut that has been added to my start menu, and that is my Microsoft Office 365 portal. So there's two things that I want to configure in the first instance. I want to configure the settings in here, and then I also want to configure, as part of my Microsoft Office 365 deployment, I want to go in and I want to configure the Microsoft SharePoint Workspace 2010. Because what we're going to do is we are going to create what's called a shared document library on SharePoint, and then that's where I'm going to store all of my attachments for SAP Business One. Alright, so just bear with me as we go through this process. So step one, let's go into our Microsoft Office 365 portal, and I'm going to go into my team site. So this is the SharePoint site which you have set up as part of your Office 365. Now you'll see I've already done all of this, and I've done a little bit of configuring of the system and set it up as my SAP Business One on-demand demo SharePoint site. But what you need to do is you need to make sure you have a shared documents library. Now I've already created one here, and it's called Shared Documents. Alright, so this is what I want to access, and I want to map this through with SAP Business One. But the first thing I want to do is I would like to keep a copy of all these documents on my local system as well. So not only am I going to link to SAP Business One, but I'm also going to have these documents synchronized to my local PC. And the other thing I can also do, even though this session that I'm showing you here is running in the cloud, I can also go to my local PC, because you can see I'm running a local copy of Windows 7. I can go and link this and have these documents synchronized onto my local PC as well. Alright, hopefully that's not too confusing. There's a couple of different layers here that I'm talking about, but hopefully you get the idea of what I'm doing. So how do I do that? Well, you can see that this particular site, my shared documents, when I hover over this library, you'll see that it is https://richarduffy.sharepoint.com/shared%20, which is the equivalent of a space in a URL, documents. Alright, so I need to remember that that is my URL for this particular site. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to click on Start, and now I'm going to go to Microsoft Office. I'm going to go to SharePoint Workspace 2010. SharePoint Workspace is what gives us the ability to keep this document library synchronized and offline. Now, I've got a couple of choices. I can create a new account if this is the first time I've used it on a brand new PC, or I can restore an existing account. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new account. So I'll say next. Now it'll ask me to create the account using my email address. So first thing I need to do is I need to give it a name. So I will call this as my account for actually. Yes. So Richard Duffy, and my email address, richard@smbsolutions.com.au, and this is the domain name that I have registered and I'm using with Office 365. So I'll say finish. And as you can see, it's now creating my account. That's now done, and you'll see it's just doing a couple of steps. It's reminding me that I should save my account offline so I don't lose it later. So that's all great. And now you'll see what I've got here is my launch bar for Microsoft SharePoint 2010 Workspace. So let's just move that up here. So right now there's no workspaces in here. I want to add this workspace, so I'll go in here and I'll say new, and I'll say it's a new SharePoint workspace. So I'm going to create a copy of a SharePoint site on my local computer, and that's going to automatically synchronize with the server. Now this is where I need to remember the URL. So it's https://richardduffy.sharepoint.com, and I'll say OK. It's now contacting the server. It's going to synchronize, and now it's going to ask me all of the different documents and different libraries and components of my SharePoint workspace. It's going to ask me which ones do I want to synchronize. Well, really the only one that I want to synchronize is going to be my shared documents. Alright, so you'll see here it is, shared documents, and it's going through and it's doing the setup here. So I'm going to let that finish. Because then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the system that this is the only component that I want to have synchronized offline. So now you can see it's finished its initial synchronization, and it's telling me what you need to do now is go in here and choose to open the workspace. So you can see this is the website now synchronized to my local machine and opened up using SharePoint Workspace. So what do I want to do? Well, that's now created, and I can go in and I can change how I have this information synchronized, right? So I can disconnect the form templates, I can disconnect Outlook via SharePoint. Basically, I can disconnect all these other libraries except for my shared documents. All right. So you can see this particular folder is sitting here, and what I'm able to do is I can go in here, right click on it, and I can choose properties. So this is important. What do I want to do? I want to go in and I want to make a note again specifically of this folder location, because I now want to go ahead and I want to create this as a share from my local computer, okay, from my session to this location out on the web. And using the WebDAV protocol, I'm going to map this as a network drive. All right, so let's go through that process. How do I do it? Well, very, very simply, I go here in and I open up Microsoft Explorer or Windows Explorer. And then if I choose computer and I go up here and I say, I now want to map a network drive. So it's going to say, well, what drive do you want to map? Well, I'm going to map this drive as drive S, and then it's going to ask me, well, what's the folder? I want to choose here, connect to a website that you can use to store your documents and pictures. So I'll click on that, and it goes into the add a network location wizard, and then I'll say next. Then it's going to ask me to choose a custom network location, and now it's asking me for that network address. So again, remember, this is where I've got to put this in. And remember, it was richardduffy.sharepoint.com, and now this will be where you'll put in your own allocated team site and the name of the specific library that you want to use to store your SAP Business One documents in. and then we'll say next. And you can see it's now going to give this a name for this network location. Now I can leave the default here, richardduffy.sharepoint.com, or I can call it, let's say, SAP Business One Docs on Office 365. So given that the name, and then I'll say next. Alright, and so you can now see I've got a shortcut for this location which will appear in computer. So when I click finish, it's going to open that network location. So I click finish. There it is, richardduffy.sharepoint.com, shared documents. So now what I want to do is I want to map a network drive to that particular folder. But there's a special format that I have to use when I'm doing that mapping. So you can see here is my folder. If I right click and I choose properties, you'll see down the bottom here in the comment area, it actually has a full URL that I need to use to access this from the file system. So if I copy that, I'll say OK. And then if I go back into my map network drive and I paste that in here, and I'll say finish, you'll now see it's connecting that drive letter to that network location. So now not only do I have that network location mapped to the URL, but I also have it mapped as a drive letter. So far so good? Okay. Our next step is to go into SAP Business One and point our shared folder to that location. So let's just start up SAP Business One. And as I said, I'm using version 9. I'm using the 64-bit client. So we'll just start that up. And again, remember, it doesn't matter if you're using this in the cloud or you're using it on a local PC, exactly the same process. So I'm going to log in. Alright, so now you can see I'm in SAP Business One version 9, and this is what we call our new golden thread design. So all I need to do is go into modules, go into administration, go here into my system initialization, go to my general settings, go across here to path, and now for my attachments folder, I click here on the ellipsis and I choose my S drive. And you'll see what it's done is it's automatically put in this mapping of this particular folder location. Alright, so then I say update. It's now going to dive out. It's going to validate that SAP Business One can see that folder, which it now can. And what I can now do is anytime I need to attach a document, it's going to store that document on that folder on my SharePoint server. It's going to be available from inside SAP Business One, and it's also going to be synchronized onto my local PC, so they get the best of everything. Let's go and try it. Let's say I'm going to go into inventory. I'm going to go into item master data, and I'm going to navigate to my first option, my first item. So it's my IBM Info Print 1312. Now when I go here to attachments, when I choose browse, where is it going to browse to? Well, it's now browsing out to that location out on Microsoft SharePoint. Alright, so it's browsing to that shared documents folder. So what I can do is I can choose a document that's already been loaded there and link to it. Alright, so let's say I'll do that. I'll pick this document and I'll say open. It's just saying this file already exists. Do I want to replace it? And I'll say yes, and you'll now see that that has been mapped into my SAP Business One. And I'll say update. And that's now stored. And then if I come back here and I look at that item master data again, let's call that item up. I look at my attachments. There it is. I can now select my attachment and I can double click on the attachment, and of course it's now opening that attachment up from my SharePoint portal server. Now, The great thing about this is that what you can do is you can now also take advantage of all of the version control and management functionality that you get provided by SharePoint, including versioning, the ability to check documents in and out to prevent other people from making changes to the documents, and so on. All right, but I'm not going to get into the details of that. I'm assuming you're familiar with what SharePoint allows you to do. And there you have it. Your document is in place. So now what I want to do, I want to take a document that I've got and I want to add it to SAP Business One, and I want to add it at the same time to SharePoint. So I can do this with one process. All I do is I go here and choose Browse. I'll go out to where I know that document is. So I'll go out to my libraries and there's my document. So here it is. I've got my IBM InfoPrint 1312 specifications. So I say open, and there it is. It's now added to SAP Business One, and it's also going to be uploaded to my SharePoint portal server. Then I can also add a picture if I want to. So I can go across here to Remarks and click on my picture link. But what do I see? It's failed to load the image. Why is that? Well, what I'm going to need to do is also point my product images also at a SharePoint library. All right. How do I do that? Same process. Step one, I'm just going to go and make sure I update this item first. Okay, and that's done. Step one, got to go up here into administration, then go to my system initialization, go to my general settings, go to my pictures folder, and I can point the pictures at the same location, or I can create a separate SharePoint library. In this case, I'm going to just use my shared documents again. So that's okay. I'll say update. Let's go back to our item master data, and now this time I'm going to click on my picture again. Now it's going to say, where is it? Go out to my documents. There's my item image. I'll say open, and there it is. There is the document image. Not only is it now stored in SAP Business One, but as soon as I hit update, guess what? That information is automatically being uploaded into SharePoint for me as well. So I'll click OK, and when I go across to my Internet Explorer, okay, and I reload my page, what am I going to see? You'll see there are the additional documents that I've just added. Okay, there's my IBM InfoPrint 1312 specifications and my image of my IBM 1312. So again, there it is. There's the image. And if I want to, I can also open the document. Okay, and it's opening it up using Microsoft Word, using the web version of Microsoft Word. Okay, it's just reminding me to install Microsoft Silverlight if I want it to be a little bit smoother and easier to use. I'll do that later. But you can see there is that tight integration now happening between SAP Business One and Office 365. And of course, over here in my synchronized SharePoint workspace, when I go and look on this, I look at my shared documents. The documents aren't there yet, but as soon as I synchronize, and I can configure the synchronization however I want that to happen. Do I want it to happen automatically? Do I want it to happen every hour? Do I want it to happen every day? How do I want that to happen? Completely up to me. There you go. You can see I now have those documents available for me offline. All right. So some pretty comprehensive functionality that's available. So that's it for this session. What I've done is I've taken you through the process, showed you how to set up the link between SAP Business One and Office 365 using the Microsoft SharePoint functionality and using that attachment. What I'll do in our next session is I'm going to show you how to map your email across, so you're using your email system with your hosted Exchange server provided by Office 365 and how all of that integration works there as well.